Hey everyone, and welcome to the 5 Bytes podcast. And now a roundup of this week's enterprise IT news highlights. In an article published by Pavan Devulleri, the person in charge of Windows at Microsoft, it has been announced that there is some somewhat welcome news for users. They intend to take a step back and allow users to skip updates during device setup to get to the desktop faster and restart or shut down without installing updates, and an ability to pause updates for longer when needed, all while reducing update noise with fewer automatic restarts and notifications. The article states that there should be less disruption from Windows updates, moving devices to a single monthly reboot, while organizations and users who wish to get new features and fixes faster will remain able to do so. I guess because I'm not currently managing desktops for an organization, I don't see this as a huge win. But what is hopefully a huge win is that the article also commits to a greater onus from Microsoft on the quality of Windows updates. They promise higher quality builds entering each insider channel with more rigorous validation and feedback signals before release, as well as stronger feedback loops across Windows so issues are identified, prioritized, and addressed faster. Microsoft saying that we will get the ability to pause updates for as long as we need, and that restart or shutdown will be able to happen without being forced to install updates, to me is a bit concerning. Now, I do like the option to like shut down or restart without having to wait for the updates, because that could be quite detrimental if you do need to do a reboot and you're like presenting something, for example, to a room of people. You don't want to have to also wait for Windows updates. So bypassing that as needed is a good idea, but the idea of being able to forego Windows updates for longer than is currently normal, I'm not sure that's a good thing. I know that, yes, they want to make it a better experience for people, but, and I don't know, is this political? It might be political, but I think if the pandemic taught us anything, is that there are a lot of people who will put their own convenience and perception of freedom ahead of their security and well-being, and that's fine and well for an individual. But if the knock-on effect is that it starts to harm others, which, having devices that are not secure and could be infiltrated or attacked, and then that could then be used to perhaps get information that that person has on you, well, then that could potentially affect other people, because this one weak link in the chain appeared as low hanging fruit to attackers. But maybe I'm overthinking this. So I'm sure it's going to be good news for some, maybe not so good news for those in security. LeapingComputer.com has reported that Microsoft have said that the March Windows 11 updates broke sign-ins with Microsoft accounts across multiple Microsoft apps, including Teams and OneDrive. These sign-in issues appeared after installing KB5079473, which is a cumulative update that Microsoft released last week as part of Patch Tuesday. And according to a Windows Release Health Dashboard update published last Wednesday, it will trigger warnings that the impacted devices are not connected to the internet. The list of affected applications also included Microsoft Edge, Excel, Word, and Microsoft 365 Copilot, which displays the same error message for features that required the Microsoft account sign-in. Microsoft has provided a workaround, but also over this past weekend, which is now a few days out, or a few days removed, rather, Microsoft started rolling out KB 5085516, which is an optional out-of-band update, which does address this bug and includes all patches delivered with last week's, or well, the previous week's Patch Tuesday security updates. So if you want to go grab that out-of-band patch, if you have been impacted by the sign-in issue, it is there for you to use. A longer standing issue that has been ongoing is a bug causing classic Outlook sync issues with Gmail and Yahoo Mail accounts. The bug triggers 0x800CCC0F and 0x800 757 error codes when synchronizing Gmail and Yahoo accounts. Microsoft fixed the issue in Microsoft 365 last Friday, but did warn that some customers may still experience sync issues until their OAuth token expires. Mozilla has announced that a free built in VPN is coming to Firefox later this month. Firefox Free VPN will offer 50 gigabytes of monthly data. A Mozilla account will be required to use the feature. This is not a full device VPN, according to omgubuntu.co.uk. The Firefox VPN only protects traffic inside of the browser, not data sent outside. But, frankly, that is still pretty cool, and it's going to be pretty useful from within the Firefox browser. The free VPN in Firefox will be available with Firefox 149 update, which is due for release on March 24th. So by the time you're listening to this, I actually recorded this on March 24th. You should have it available already. In fact, earlier today, I was testing out a feature in Numessa Cloud Pager, and I was using the latest Firefox, which was Firefox 149. So I know it's already out. Initially, it's only going to be available if you're in the US, France, Germany, or the UK, which I think I need to go ahead and check to see if that feature is available for me in Ireland. Maybe they lumped us in with the UK, which does tend to happen. I know that I've been covering the Stryker incident for a few episodes now, but I find this one particularly fascinating given the nature of so many devices being wiped via Intune. So hopefully you're okay with indulging me in another update to the story this week. Well, Stryker stated in a recent regulatory filing that the attack is now contained. They returned to mostly normal operations late last week, according to cybersecuritydive.com, but reportedly they're still working to fully restore manufacturing, which seems like a bit of a contradiction in my opinion, but that's what the article stated. And Stryker has confirmed once again that there's no indication that customers have been affected by this, but also have stated that there's no indication suppliers, vendors, or other partners were affected either. So, we knew last week that customer devices were not affected, but I guess this goes that step further and indicates a much broader set of organizations should be unaffected too, which is good. The FBI seized two websites used by the Handala hacktivist group that was responsible for the attack. And while there has been no official announcement by law enforcement regarding the seizures, the domain name servers have now been switched to those commonly used by the FBI when seizing domains. Handala has acknowledged that their websites were seized and stated they have a need for a more resilient infrastructure, stating that they are in the process of creating new websites to announce their attacks. Their Telegram post read, quote, "In light of recent events and the need to establish secure and resilient infrastructure, we inform you that building a new digital base is a complex and time-consuming process. However, we remain committed to continuing our mission without interruption." End quote. What a matter of fact, but also quite a professional statement by a hacker group, but there you go. After the attack, Microsoft and the US CISA released guidance on hardening Windows domains and securing Intune to help prevent similar attacks at other companies. So that's included. There's links included to those, rather, in a story by bleepcomputer.com that I'm referencing this week. And you'll be able to find a link to that story and the subsequent links within that story over at 5bytespodcast.com with this episode, which is episode 432. According to the Register, users of Microsoft Startup Credits have been reporting surprise credit card charges and invoices that they never saw coming. Now, before you point the accusative finger at Microsoft, it appears the culprit in this case is the use of third-party models. Accessing Anthropic's Claude via Azure AI Foundry incurs charges that startup credits do not cover, something a Microsoft support forum moderator initially insisted was not the case. However, I would point out that forum moderators are not necessarily an authority. But to make matters worse, the system provides few to no notifications warning users when startup credits are converted into real credit card charges, which, yeah, maybe you could lay some blame on Microsoft's feet for this, but a small bit of buyer beware. If you're going to start consuming these types of services that could potentially eat up a lot of credits, it's probably best to make sure before you start, cranking out those tokens and what have you. BleepComputer.com reported that Microsoft's Azure Monitor alerts are being abused to send callback phishing emails that impersonate warnings from the Microsoft security team about unauthorized charges on accounts. Over the past month, numerous people have reported receiving Azure Monitor alerts warning of suspicious charges or invoice activity on their accounts, urging them to call an enclosed phone number. So if you get something like this, be suspicious, right? Don't go calling that phone number and then handing over a bunch of information about your respective Microsoft accounts and personal details. This could be a phishing attempt. The U.S. Federal Communications Commission has updated its cover list to include all consumer routers made in foreign countries, banning the sale of new models in the United States. The list previously did include specific products and companies tied to security concerns, such as Kaspersky, Huawei, ZTE, Hikvision, and Yahoo. I have not heard of two of those, but yeah, I've covered the fact that Kaspersky and Huawei were added to the naughty list. It's been a few years now, I believe, particularly for Kaspersky and more recently Huawei. But adding all routers and manufactured abroad to the covered list follows a national security determination that was issued on March 20th by an executive branch interagency body. According to bleepingcomputer.com, foreign produced routers carry a supply chain risk that could disrupt the US economy, its critical infrastructure, and national defense. And that is what was stated in an assessment by the National Security Determination. The agency determined that these devices could also be used to immediately and severely disrupt US critical infrastructure and directly harm US persons. For regular consumers in the US, the new rules are expected to have no immediate effect, as all existing routers will continue to be sold in the country. Conditional approval has been granted to certain routers used in the US Department of War or the Department of Homeland Security for drone systems, which have been determined not to constitute a security risk, which I know, like supply chain and, since things are a little bit touchy now, given the multiple war fronts, that perhaps there could be an infiltration and something could be put into new router devices from these vendors. That might be why this is happening. But at the same time, you would think they would just scrub and get rid of the routers that are already from overseas vendors, particularly those in use by the likes of the Department of Homeland Security and U.S. Department of War. Um, yeah, they might not have had a security flaw at the like base level in the devices themselves when they were checked, but I mean, these routers do come with software, and those vendors and the people who work for those vendors know the ins and outs of them. So it seems pretty half assed to not also immediately replace those routers, at least in government agencies, whatever about telling, other third party private companies that they had to get rid of them. At least the government should be, I would think. That is, if they believe what they're selling. OpenAI is reportedly rolling out a new feature called Library for ChatGPT, which allows you to store your personal files or images on OpenAI's cloud storage. OpenAI says ChatGPT Library requires Plus, Pro, or Business subscriptions, and it's rolling out to customers across the world, except in the European Economic Area, Switzerland, and the United Kingdom. Oh boy. Well, I'd be immediately suspicious of the fact that it's rolling out to everywhere but those. But hey, if you're feeling lucky, go ahead and start using that library liberally. The library section only has files that you uploaded, and you can upload files by following certain steps like opening the Composer menu, selecting Add from Library, and then choosing the file you want to use. OpenAI says ChatGPT automatically saves uploaded and created files, including files uploaded in chats, in a dedicated secure locations so they can be easily accessed later. And what's interesting is, yeah, I've noticed, at least in Ireland, that ChatGPT does have a memory, But when it comes to, say, like a picture or a file that you upload to it, it doesn't seem to retain that very long. Maybe just for like a certain duration of the session. So it's maybe not storing that. They might be storing it really, and they're just obfuscating it by not having it evident in the memory. But yeah, maybe there is already that difference in the way things are stored outside of the US. But this feature means the files are saved to your account until you delete them manually. But deleting a chat containing a file does not delete those files saved to the library, according to bleepycomputer.com. Finally, in the news for this week, there was a really interesting story about bleepycomputer.com on a North Carolina musician called Michael Smith, who has pleaded guilty to collecting over $10 million in royalty payments through a massive streaming royalty fraud scheme on Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon Music, and YouTube Music. The 54-year-old musician bought hundreds of thousands of songs generated using AI from an accomplice, uploaded them to streaming platforms, and used automated AI bots to stream the AI generated tracks billions of times. According to court documents unsealed when he was charged in September 2024, he fraudulently inflated listening stats on his songs on these digital platforms between 2017 and 2024. To avoid detection by anti fraud systems, he also had the bots access the streaming platforms using virtual private networks or VPNs. And in a communication to his co-conspirators back in 2018, he reportedly said, quote, "To not raise any issues with the powers that be, we need a ton of content with small amounts of streams. We need to get a ton of songs fast to make this work around the anti-fraud policies these guys are all using now." End quote. At the peak of the operation, Smith was using over 1,000 bot accounts to artificially boost streams. And on October 20th, 2017, he also emailed himself a financial breakdown outlining how he operated 52 cloud service accounts, each with 20 bot accounts. He estimated that each bot could stream around 636 songs per day for a total of approximately 661,440 streams per day, with an average royalty rate of half a cent per stream, and the daily earnings would reach $3,307.20, and the monthly earnings would reach $99,216, and the annual earnings would exceed $1.2 million. Prosecutors said that Smith fraudulently collected over $10 million in royalty payments after having his bots stream hundreds of thousands of AI generated songs billions of times. And in a February 2024 email, he confirmed these claims, boasting that the songs generated over 4 billion streams and $12 million in royalties since 2019. And Smith has agreed to pay over 8 million, well, just over $8 million back in forfeiture, and faces a maximum sentence of 5 years in prison after pleading guilty to one count of conspiracy to commit wire fraud. Now, paying back just over 8 million and having made over 12 million in royalties, and then possibly only doing 5 years, I don't know. Is the crime worth it in the end? I assume there's also going to be some means of taking whatever assets he bought with the money that he had. Otherwise, it seems like this crime kind of paid off in his favor. But now, this episode's scripts, tricks, and tips. I mean, I've said it before, but it's getting harder to find good scripts, tricks, and tips for each episode. So if you do have any that you'd like me to feature, feel free to reach out to me. That's at 5bytespodcast at gmail.com. Or you can reach out to me on Blue Sky or LinkedIn as well if you'd like. I think since I'm no longer actively using Twitter, or X as it's now called, I'm probably missing quite a bit that might be getting shared out there. So a little bit of self promotion, but not really. It's kind of cross promotion. The awesome Aaron Parker was maintaining a repository of application icon files in the PNG format, which is very useful for Intune, but also for other like application delivery systems, perhaps like Citrix application layering, or indeed Numesa Cloud Pager. And it seemed like the repository wasn't being updated in the last few years. So I went ahead and forked that repository, and I've started to contribute some icons that were not there. So I'll share a link to that, and you can use that for your own purposes. But also, not just to promote myself, you should really check out Aaron Parker's GitHub repository because he has a whole lot of useful resources there. Well, that's it for this episode. Thank you so much for listening.